If you do it more. And we need it. So we talked about having some.
I'm wondering if it's the mics are hooked up or if the input is selected incorrectly or.
All right, Jamie Hoffman, hold.
Yeah.
Jamie, will you let us know that you can now hear us? Jamie Kane. See a hand.
Someone raised a hand.
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Okay,
now.
Awesome.
thank you. All right, thank you, Jamie Hoffman. All right, bye.
All right, now
Technical difficulties hopefully resolved.
we're good. We can be heard. So we'll just move forward now with the current item. So we just completed with 48 Nelson Ave, we just completed with 51 Mechanical Road. We prior to that had tabled 48 Nelson until the end of new business, and we'll go back to that if anybody from that project is here and can hear us now. And we are moving on to 80 Main Street, and we have the applicant and architect here for that project. And so before we hear from them, if I can just get, this is a new application of a project that we have seen before, but it's a kind of a brand new scenario. And if we just get like a really high level from you first, Valerie, before we go to the applicant.
Yeah, sure. I think it's this particular project, as probably the board knows, that this project was developed, it was completed, and then we had the collapse of the wall. So the applicant is back for site plan approval to deal with the rear of the property, as well as some amendments to the actual parking itself in terms of emergency access. So it does require a new site plan approval. It is, this project is technically zoning compliant, so it doesn't require any zoning variances at this point in time. Even though this project went through seeker before, the additional work that's needed does fall under an unlisted action under seeker. So they will need to provide like a short environmental assessment form. And as a result of this, this will require a referral to the Environmental Advisory Council for recommendation for LWRP consistency. So I'm going to turn this over to Anthony to talk a little bit about some of the engineering issues that are still there on the site and that are going to be required as part of your review.
Thanks.
So some of our biggest concerns are a little bit more detail on the structural component of it, how deep you drill into the rock. We had asked for some of those details. We are short of handicap space by over 25. There should be 2, so you might have to do some adjusting with the parking. I did make a suggestion that perhaps the fire department should take another look at this because the islands were revised to be flush just to make sure they're happy with everything. Another component that we were a little concerned with is the crosswalk crossing over Main Street there. And I don't know if we could just kind of connect to it, and they have the ability to walk to, I think it's State and Main, and there's crosswalks there. Just concerned with people coming around that bend and people are trying to cross the road there. And the other thing is we would kind of just suggest perhaps having the third-party reviewer for the structural component of this, of the steel and tied into the rocks. And a big thing is construction phasing as well. How are you going to stabilize the slope while this thing's being constructed? That was one of our biggest concerns as well. Other than that, I think there's a few little plan things here and there.
Okay, so and I think as part of your response, it'd be helpful to let's get the drawings up there, and I'll let you guys walk us through what you're actually proposing here, because we've seen various iterations of this in the past, and this is quite different.
It might be important though too. This is a new ownership group than who previously got approvals for 80 Main Street, right? Different owners, different LLC.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and also just to be clear, just on the history, I mean, there was the development, you know, the residential building that was built, and then there was the wall collapse. Subsequent to that, we've seen various proposals for reconstruction of that wall as recently as about a year ago. And this is a subsequent proposal and a new application different from what we previously looked at from rebuilding that wall.
Is it the civil plans that you want? Okay.
You can zoom in now.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Robert Fortney, 11 Lakeview Road, Austining. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I've been involved with this project for quite a while, in different aspects. A little background, some of you may know, this original application started in 2011, different owners. The building that was there was in a different location. The building was moved. Hudson EFT was the owner. At that time, they completed the building and were ready to move in, and actually people did start moving in. And it was 5 years ago, in August, that we had the unfortunate incident of the wall behind the building collapsing. In the subsequent period, ensuing period, there are a number of lawsuits filed by parties down below, counterclaims by contractors, claims against Hudson EFT, claims against the Village of Austining, and that litigation is ongoing. We'll be back in court on that, I believe, in October. So that's part of it, of the background. The wall collapse was obviously unfortunate and not expected, nothing that anyone wanted. The owner, Hudson EFT, you may know, when there was a foreclosure on that property, the federal court, the lender was a California entity, and they foreclosed the mortgage in federal court. A receiver was appointed by the federal court, and I think he appeared here on several occasions, Andrew Hers, and they made several proposals at that time to remedy the scenario and get it to move along, but none of them worked out, both because of cost and the mortgage holder not wanting to do so. The current owner, Rivercrest Apartments, Mr. Andre Fernandez, the principal of that entity, purchased the property in January of this year at the foreclosure sale. Subsequent to that purchase, we met with a number of the members of the village administration and the consultants to discuss what the plans were for the building. And the plans were to remedy the situation there, to come up with some way to make it viable. In the interim, the owner took on the responsibility to repair and put back in order the interior of the building. Although it was new construction, there were a number of incidents where we had pipes breaking, sprinklers going off, people breaking in. So there were several hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of renovations and repairs that were done there. Those repairs have all been approved by the Austining Building Department. So now the interior of the building is in order. Now we're focusing on the exterior of the building. And our design is different from the last one you saw. I think about 3.5 years ago, the prior owner did discuss the deck that went before you. They didn't go forward with that. They changed their mind. They went out of business. The new receiver came in. So there's been a few permutations there. But the actual size of the building is obviously remained the same and everything but the rear. The rear has been stabilized by emergency provisions that the village initiated back in 2018. So we haven't seen any movement there. You may know also that the building itself is pinned into the rock. It's a unique construction there. That's been monitored for the last 5 years, and there's been no movement there. So we are comfortable that the building is stable, and we're going to be hopefully taking all the necessary actions to make sure that the rear of the property, that slope, is stabilized, and that we were able to meet the requirements of the building department and the fire department by the design that we have that's being proposed to meet their concerns regarding safety, And also, I believe architecturally, it's very pleasant and pleasing to look at. We're working closely with the property owner at 60 Main Street. We have their agreement. We've sent in a letter to that extent for their cooperation to access 80 Main Street slope, because you have to go from the bottom up. You can't go from the top down. And they are cooperative, and we will address all of those issues. There were some issues, I have to be very honest about, that are still unresolved in the litigation, but we will have those issues resolved before we're finished with our proposal. So that's a little bit of the background of what we have. You guys know JB, he's come up with, I think, a very workable site plan. We also have with us this evening, Ralph Rossi, professional engineer, who can look at or answer any questions you may have about what we proposed, and Mr. Fernandez himself. We received the comments from Keller Sessions and your comments as well on Friday. We've met, we have responses to them. If you'd like to hear them verbally, we're prepared to answer those questions this evening, and/or we can do it in another time. We would like to move along with this project. It's been an eyesore in the town for far too long. The longer it stays there, I think it's more of a problem. We're ready to do so. The finances are in order to do so. We have the wherewithal to do so. We need the approval to go ahead. JB and Ralph can speak a little about what we would like to do right now. There are some questions that you raised in your reports about stabilization and the rock and the anchors, et cetera. We need to go in there before we start work to do some testing on the rock to understand what's there. Some of it may have weathered over the last 5 years, but Ralph and JB can speak about that much more clearly than I can. So we're ready to answer any of your questions. As to the fire department, Maggie may be sending me an email or a text now that we have a
You're
meeting tomorrow
confirmed.
at 5 o'clock
Yes, sir.
with the fire department regarding their issues. So we're looking to move as quickly as we can. We'd like to get this thing started before the winter. You know, it's a lot easier to work on a slope, even with global warming, if you don't have snow and ice. So that's very important for us to get this thing going. We have one more item that I raised in a letter to Joe Agostinelli today. With some plans. It's not before you, but I raised it with Joe, and in case it comes up, I'd like to be able to answer any questions about that. We would like to receive or obtain a TCO to utilize 11 of the units. If you're familiar with the building, it has two sides, one facing the river, one facing State Street, the two distinct sides. We have drawings we sent to Joe. I mean, that's not before you tonight, but I just want to put it out there in case it comes up, if anyone has a question. We have looked at the safety issues and whatever else is there. Obviously, the fire and buildings would look at it as well. But it would allow us to start to make use of the buildings been vacant for 5 years. And it's obviously a big expense to keep going. We think that it's safe. One of the things in my letter to Joe, I mentioned there are 11 units that we believe can be utilized. Under the requirements, we would need 3 units in the building to be affordable. We're ready to put 3 affordable units in the 11 that we use now. That's just, that's not before you, but I wanted to put it out there and answer any question.
Was this building 55 and up? I think the
Yes.
original approval was
Yes.
55 and
Yes.
up, okay.
So, you know, we're looking, I think there's a market, I think there's a need. And rather than wait another year and a half, we'd like to see something happen now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful at this point if we could just kind of walk through what the actual interventions are that you're
Yeah.
planning, and we can kind of see what's really before us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where am I going?
You can go to the driveway side.
All right, so walk us through it, and
Yeah.
yeah, perfect.
So-
Thanks.
Basically, this was an approved site plan. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Can you go to the drawing before? So this was very much where it was built under the all approval. Before any, before the wall was collapsed. This was the parking layout, and there was an access from State Street. that we were utilizing. That's the slope after the collapse. So some of the issues we tried to remedy here was the access. We got rid of the islands. We're proposing to get rid of the curves on the islands, so it is easier for maneuvering for the fire apparatus. And that led us to also rework some of the turnaround, some of the aisle width to make sure they all comply with code. And that's what we propose, and we go to the next. So this is what we're proposing now. So still have the same amount of parking spaces. Issues, we don't have an island, and as Tony was pointing out, I mean, we can easily accommodate another accessible parking space, and we still keep the 32 parking spaces that are required for the original approval. One of the issues that had come out was when they built the original access to State Street, the sidewalk, because of the neighboring buildings, the sidewalk was a little bit narrower than anticipated. So that has led us to create an access to Main Street to what it was the old driveway. And we did receive the comment that probably a crosswalk there on Main Street is probably not the best place. We better off utilizing the crosswalk and State. So we will remove that from. Oh, yeah, it's all right. Yeah, so we will be removing that for the next semester. We do have, we are proposing the walk on the outside of the building. As far as driveway and access, that's very much the change that we are. It's only, removing curves, realigning the parking lot. We're not increasing the impervious area. We're not doing such a thing. We are, propose to eliminate the crosswalk. That we go to the outside.
And just while we're on this, that pedestrian walkway, is that gonna be the same width as the existing driveway? Are you just repurposing the drive? Are you making any modifications to it?
Actually, I believe it's now right. We're gonna put bollard. There's some bollards there for protection. To make sure nobody uses the driveway. We'll add some more to make sure that.
But otherwise, it's just it'll be the same asphalt path
Yeah.
that's there right now. Is there any other treatment that just to make it clear that that's for pedestrians and not just look like an abandoned driveway?
We can look into that, see if there's different treatment they can done. Yep. So there's very much the crosswalks. We have a crosswalk to the parking area. We have a garbage enclosure right on the building. And also, so then you go into the walk that we created on the other side. This part of the building remains largely unchanged. In the front, people go up now. So this was the slope treatment or stabilization to remedy the issue with the wall. We have cut sheets and we did provide a lot of information, and there's more study that needs to be done for the rock. And that will be done as part of the engineering company that will be installing the system. And we won't have to have access to start from some of these types. In the walk, now we go to the other drawing, we can show you just a rendering, a 3D rendering showing the wall. And you know, it's a
Separate
Oh,
file.
different.
Yeah, so. Yeah, just this one, yeah, the rendering.
Find out soon.
It's taking a while, so it's down there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that is where is being proposed. The walk on the building, in the stabilization, the real vegetation there. And I believe already, the fire department had a certain point looked at this and believe it was the right approach to access. Said that will be confirmed tomorrow.
How wide is the walkway?
It is currently proposed as 10 feet.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of our comments is I believe it has to be 10 foot clear. So you just gotta look at where the railing sits, because I think it's to the outside. And the other thing is, I don't know if the fire department's aware of the slope. Because I don't know if they want to put a ladder on that deck to get up. So you might want to just bring that to their attention, the slope of that walkway. I think we noted it.
Okay.
I was gonna ask if that was a rendering error, but you are actually sloping the
Yes.
walkway along the
Yes, it is.
grade.
Is the walkway cantilevered or is it supported with?
You're gonna see we have details that it's a bracket system to support. There. So you see that's the plan of the walkway, and I've clicked on a little bit, I think it shows on the support system and how. the bracket thing.
So those are bracketed back to the foundation.
Yes.
This is one of the things that the fire department asked for. And I'm sure they're gonna be looking at. They wanted that for fire access around.
Right. So. Can we speak a little bit more about this hillside that you're engineering underneath? Because that's also, I mean, that's the rendering is quite beautiful. I mean, we're looking at a planted hillside as opposed to a stark concrete wall, which is what we saw last time. So I'd love to have a better understanding of how this works, where it's been done in the past and just a little more background.
So my name is Ralph Rossi, RMA Development. I happen to be I am a professional engineer, but I'm really also a developer. I've been developing properties for the past 10 years. Andre and I ironically are just developed a large property in Portchester, and for some reason I keep on getting involved in very steep slopes and projects that are on the hillside, very challenging to work with. This one is not that unique. You actually see this type of stabilization if you've gone across any highway or you look along any rock embankment, you'll see it quite often. In fact, I was in New Rochelle the other day and they have a steep slope rock embankment across Shore Road that unfortunately part of the rock collapsed about a year ago. And they went in and did very similar to what we're doing here, where they pinned into the hillside and you basically put anchors. They're either hollow bar or solid bar anchors. You put that into the hill, and then what you're doing, you're grouting into the anchor. So you create a hole, you're boring a hole, put the anchor in, and then you basically are putting either hollow bar or threaded coiled rod along with wire that you tie to a screen system to stabilize the hill. So it's basically designed as part of the rockway, or part of the rock sway, it'll automatically pull back from this stuff. And then on top of that, you put a Tecamac polyethylene, polystyrene shield grid. And then on top of that, you can plant greenery, you can plant vegetation, you can plant grass, you can hydro seed. So it gives the hillside a much more natural look as opposed to being a monolithic concrete wall. And it's, durable and, visually pleasing. And of course, a lot less expense and more practical than a concrete wall. The walkway is straightforward. The walkway is not cantilevered, it's actually bracketed to the foundation wall. For any of you that know about fire, and I know fire department access, fire department has 3 modes of access to this building. They don't need to access the rear of the building. But I'm not going to speak for them. I'm sure they're going to tell you that after they review the plans that what was provided for them is more than adequate to their access to the rear of the building as well. Even though under the code you don't require, it's not required. I agree with everything Bob said, except for one. Bob said the inside of the building, he thinks the building is safe. I know the building is safe. The building is completely secure. It's been monitored for 5 years. The crack monitoring, gauges all over the basement, nothing has moved. Andre went to great pains, restore the entire interior of the building in better condition than it was before, frankly. So everything's been put back together. When you have a building vacant for that long period of time, as you can imagine, the heat doesn't work. In the winter time, the pipes freeze, the roof leaks, right? I mean, it decimated half the building. So basically 50% of the interior had to be reconstructed. And it's all up to code. Currently. And that's one of the reasons why Andre, honestly, and I don't, from a legal point of view, I would ask that you highly consider some form of TCO for him. I know Bob mentioned half the building. In my mind, I don't see why the whole building wouldn't get a TCO, subject to maybe a year time frame to get it back stabilized, because we can completely secure the back of the building and prevent any tenants from going back there, you know, playing on the hillside, and I think do that anyway.
So I think there's still a safety issue from the fire department standpoint that they want that walkway, so they have the fire access around the building. So they may have a concern. And I'm sure Joe will speak to them about the occupancy before that's done.
My only question, if they came back and said they didn't have, or they didn't have any objection or requirement to go back there while we did the work, I would ask the board that they didn't consider.
It's really not up to this board.
Yeah.
It's up to the building inspector.
Of the buildings. So if the fire department gives the okay, and the building inspector has the authority to give the okay for the PCO.
I think the building, I mean, you should talk to the building inspector, because the bottom line is, I think departments are slightly different, and there's certain things that they will, the TCOs for and other circumstances.
I obviously, I did speak to him about a week ago. And he was in favor. In fact, he was the person who brought up the recommendation that we talked about getting a TCO from this board. Because his impression was that the planning board had to get the approval for him to issue a TCO subject to the hillside.
So we can talk to Joe for next meeting and see what he has to say.
And I do want to focus on a couple of things here and then get some board comments. So, I mean, first of all, I think it's stated before, I think this is, a really interesting project and potentially a great improvement. I definitely want to see, I want to see some more, you've spoken about precedents and other places where this has been done, and it'd be great to see those photos as part of this application for this board and for the community to see. I'm curious about maintenance and kind of how this thing looks over time and what might need to be done. I mean, it's pretty inaccessible, I suppose, except for maybe a cherry picker from the neighbor's property. And saying from the neighbor's property, I understand there are easements in place or agreements in place. Maybe easements is not correct, but for the work, but also is there any kind of anything on the books for maintenance moving forward in order to access the neighbor's property to get onto here and take care of it. So, looking at all of this, and I know Joe mentioned at the beginning, not Joe, sorry, Tony, used to Joe sitting there for so many years. But just the having a peer review and kind of because of the history of this site and its prominence in our community is really kind of understanding, from somebody that the village brings on, and giving us that additional confidence that the solution is the right one.
And obviously there's engineering to be done that has not been done on the hillside, because there's the additional borings done. We have to do additional investigations. I think what, Andre and the team would like to know is that the approach is acceptable to the board, because then of course we would do the full engineering. It's kind of putting a cart before the horse. Not really going to do the full investigation and engineering if it's completely not appealing to the board.
Right. There's a chicken egg. Obviously, we're not going to approve a proposal that's not engineered. So
for the horse, but
Yeah.
the chicken for you.
I think based on the engineer
Yeah.
comments, they really need the additional information to be comfortable that this approach
Work.
works.
Right.
So what level are we talking about?
Put
Full
the chicken
insurance.
in the car and move it.
Not
Like I
off the
said,
hill.
we would want the eyes of a structural on this as well,
Right.
third party structural engineer.
So geotechnical, structural would be for the platform. You're really talking geotechnical engineer. for the
Yeah.
west side, right?
Yeah, right. The structural component, I guess, to the rock and
Yeah, I'd like to welcome further board comments right now as well. So I don't know if there are questions or comments.
So you had a question about maintenance, and I'm assuming that was like the engineered portion of it. I had a question about the maintenance of the vegetative portion of it. Like
no
when you
maintenance.
did a plant on it, that doesn't need maintenance ever.
Whatever is there, natural stuff, you know.
I think they're different.
There's right now, nobody goes in there, whatever is there, it's gonna be, we're gonna just, put a pack assembly, it's very easy to maintain. You put a pack assembly, you leave it, and that's it, we don't have to do nothing else. And there's nobody will go there with it. That would be the easy and the better.
So like a just ground cover.
I'm not a landscape architect.
So ground cover Pakistan.
My gut said Pakistan as well.
Yeah, but doesn't it do the right thing to put it?
Okay,
The whole hillside, Pakistan.
Sure.
that's very, that's
Yeah, I'm not a landscape guy either.
very to have like a monoculture of plants, but that's just.
Yeah, maybe why don't you take that back to landscape architect and ask.
And from the maintenance perspective as well, I mean, you can try to control and plant what you want to plant, but what if a tree, seeds itself out of the hill, which
Yeah.
could easily happen and now needs to be taken out.
And
So-
and there's gonna be weeds.
Right.
It's gonna happen.
Can I just follow up on something I mentioned? We need to access the site, to answer your questions about the engineering. And we'd like to be able to do that with permission. So not to do any work there, but they have to find out what the rock is like and to clear off some debris. Just to be able to do their analysis of the rock and the engineering to answer your questions, otherwise you're guessing. So the people have to get onto that hill and do some work in order to answer your questions. And we'd like to be able to do that with your blessing.
So I was gonna say, typically on any site, you can go into your own site and do whatever testing that's necessary, so.
Yeah, right here,
The moment you see a machine in the hill.
right here, this side of the stone line, have to go, make a put the form. And then clean the rock, whatever is left there, soil, clean it. And drill it. Then after you drill it, you're gonna see full test to see how, you can do 6 feet or 10 feet or 12 feet or 14 feet, how far we need to anchor.
Yeah.
In the rock, but we need to do like 4 stretch. And this way we can analyze 100%.
Right, so if you're gonna need something structural, they need to talk to Joe about that.
Yeah, well, you want to test to give us the structure.
Be tested, but to do
Right.
a test pit.
Yeah.
Requires quite a bit of excavation because we have to tear our way up. We can't get to the
Yeah.
hill.
Right, so they just need to talk to Joe.
Yeah, I would say,
The building inspector.
sorry, I was thinking George.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely recommend mentioning it to him, not just going out there and,
That's what we're asking now.
yeah.
So if you're saying that we can coordinate this with the building inspector, and that meets your scrutiny or criteria, we're very happy with that. And these gentlemen more than capable of speaking to the building inspector, to figure out what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And as long as we're clear, we're not building anything now, we're trying to answer your questions. And we can't do that unless we get out there and kick the tires.
Right.
And you probably don't want to go to the geotech to review this with plans that aren't, but you're gonna need this information. You send him over there, he's gonna be asking all the same questions.
Yes, this is gonna be, once we do, okay, imagine that we approve to the race after we go for the bottom. We're gonna have to have a third party inspected. Once we excavate and remove the whole soil, there's still soil in that here. We're gonna remove and we need to have a third party inspector just to review our work and make sure it's every day after we take everything down, it's gonna be signed,
Yeah.
whatever stays there, it's a blue to stays there. It's gonna be, the design's gonna be 100% when we do it. Because right now, we can do this bit here, this bit over there, but then later we excavate this. Once we remove everything and we're gonna correct with the geo report, how we're gonna finalize and how many anchors we're gonna need. If we need 30 anchors or we need 50 or 20, right? We don't know exactly. Once we excavate and clean the whole site down, then we know how many anchors we need. And anyway, I think that wall collapse in the middle. I think the half that wall is there. Because I don't see the wall collapse the whole 50 feet. I think it's at depth the half is. It's part of the, if it is there, now it's moving. It belongs to the neighbor, take it off, fix that, give the rest of the material. After you take it off, that's it.
So, I mean, I think there's a lot structurally that's in geo, both, I'm using the term structural as a kind of in a layman's manner, but just to understand the stability of that hillside, both from your end, in terms of testing, and that's, I'll trust between you and the village staff and professionals to kind of to understand what needs to be done there. We haven't opened up a public hearing I'm mindful of right now, and I would like to do that. So if we could actually kind of move forward with that, as their board member can make a motion.
Bobby Balker making a motion to open public hearing.
Probably a second motion.
Any objections? No objections. We're in a public hearing. So I would like to invite, if there's anybody here in the room here to speak to this application tonight. I don't see that anybody is here, and if there's anybody on Zoom, you can use the hand raise function if you'd like to speak to this application tonight. And I don't see any hands. That's just the cursor, right? Yeah. No, it's all right. It turns into a hand sometimes. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Nina Aaron, motion to adjourn public hearing.
Bobby Balker, a second.
Any objections? No objections. The public hearing is adjourned. I just want to make sure that you guys have the clarity. I think, you've gotten lots of feedback, between Valerie and Tony, just from the professional end. We don't need to hear those, point by point responses right now. You guys know what you need to do with it. I think, between the board members and myself, some additional thoughts. So if you guys have any other questions, just regarding what we need from you next time.
Now, you want more detail on the structural or geotechnical engineering on the hillside. I'd like to know how we're going to maintain the hillside with type of sand or some other landscape recovery material. We want the fire department to confirm that in fact they're happy with the platform, the width, depth, and the slope of the platform to get up on the rear. The parking is straightforward. The site plan is straightforward. I think that's really, I think we really want to hear that structurally the hillside is stable. Yeah, can take the anchors.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize that landscaping portion. I know, if there's, native plants that can be put on that hillside, which I'm sure would ease in the maintenance, just make this kind of more naturalistic.
And there were comments in the memos, so
Yeah.
a little more detail than.
Now, as far as referral to a third party, is there any official action that this board needs to take, or is that something that can be done just based on the comments that we've made here?
So you previously, on the prior application on this property, you had referred it to a third-party structural engineer. So I think you can ask for the same review here and be done through Tony's office.
Okay, and so that's there, we don't have to take a vote on that or have any special. Okay,
No.
that's fine. So I guess that request is logged as part of our deliberations today.
Do we need any referral to the environmental?
I believe that we are waiting for your short
We need an EAF.
We need a-
Submit an EAF.
before we can make any referrals.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything that we didn't ask or that we're missing? We're good. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn this application to our next meeting?
Probably need a motion to adjourn this application to the next meeting. Brenda Barak, second the motion.
Any objections? Objections, motion carries. All right, thanks very much, guys.
Madam tomorrow, the meeting's at the site of the fire department.
5 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I'm actually just gonna take a step back in the agenda right now. We started off the meeting asking for 48 Nelson. Is there somebody here today to speak to 48 Nelson Avenue?
Come here, but I don't know.
Okay, I think for the sake of moving this forward, I think it would be appropriate. We do have the drawings up here. As a representative of the applicant. And do you know anything about the project? Can you speak briefly? Okay, so yeah, come on up. We can try to work our way through it. I think we can manage this, so it'll be great.
I'm just new to this.
Don't worry about it. It's
Well, thank you. We'll walk it through.
we will. Okay, so 48 Nelson Avenue, we are looking at it's just a VAR application. So if we can put the drawings up. we can just talk briefly about what's being requested here. All right, so we'll try to walk you through this a little bit. It looks like you're enclosing there's an old bit of deck that we had here before that you're enclosing, or is that?
Yes, so it's something like that.
Okay. And from the drawings, it's a prefab system. And I think that the manufacturer of that system is included on the names of the drawings.
Scroll down.
Yeah,
Choice manufacturer.
okay. And so we do have elevations. I think we have two elevations, I believe, the front and the left side, and the right side is presumed to be symmetrical to the left. Do you know if there's a staircase coming off of one side of the? So
I think so.
is that a stair that's already there in the house? Do you know? Do you already have a stair off the back where the deck is?
No, it's just like a little,
Okay,
yeah, it's supposed to have a staircase or something like
okay. And I want to see if we know the material, if those are a wood or a composite. Does not really give us that. What, all right, okay, so just to. We can maybe, yeah, the foot, okay. It's a little bit difficult to walk through this way. So we have a roof structure, and I believe that the drawings showed a cricket. So the roof, it looks like the roof is integral with the prefabbed, and then there's a little bit of an extension over to the sloped roof. The rendering does show exposed framing underneath. I think we could have, it would, I think, be preferable for this board if that were painted to match the rest of the structure. Yeah. That, yeah, that.
Do the
That
plan
beam.
show anything?
Do the plans show? Let's look at that elevation.
One page here.
Yeah. It does actually.
2x10 please.
I think that the rendering is actually pretty true to what the plan is showing,
Yeah.
which is an exposed joist. It doesn't show any cladding or any other cover. I'll be quite honest, I think it would be helpful to have a little bit of additional information on what's going on at the base, to have a little bit more information on the material of the stairs. I know, I'm trying to be,
What kind of footings? I'm sure that's all in there. Sonos, you just something that's telling you what they're doing. Footings.
right, though I mean, we can defer to Joe on the footings and the structural components, but certainly how this is gonna look, I want to be.
Is there an existing deck?
It looked
very
like
close to
a
the front.
patio or something.
Oh, okay, because it
rather
looked
than-
like it was like proposed deck and then proposed sunroom
Yeah.
on the proposed deck.
Because I think when I looked on.
Is there an existing deck that the sunroom is going on?
no.
So you're building a deck and then building a sunroom on it.
Someplace, something like that.
There were photos.
Yeah,
Oh, there are
on it,
photos.
just a patio or something. Very,
I may have misunderstood. I thought there was an existing patio as well that they were building on top of. That was my interpretation.
yeah, I think that was mine as well.
So what are the questions we need? DAR at this point, because the next battle, so the next meeting's not until September.
Right.
So if it's something minor, maybe we can kind of come to some sort of work.
Sure.
It does say in the letter, it said white vinyl.
Yeah, for the enclosed sunroom.
Vinyl cathedral sunroom in white,
Right.
But nothing.
platform to be built supports on existing patio
Yeah,
slab.
that all exposed.
Building landing, one
Yep.
step going on the right side.
Composite.
I think for both the stairs and for the stairs and for that, for any framing underneath the structure, if we can. Have as a condition that it would have to be clad with the same.
Or wrapped in aluminum.
Right, or if they're already using vinyl, yeah, just a white material to match the siding. could be
White composite, yeah,
non-specific,
match side.
right? And that the stairs would be, painted white. The stairs and railings would be painted white to match, or painted white or be of a white composite material to match the color of the siding. And I think that there was already a note that the roof would match the existing. Let me just go back on that. So that's important as well, because there's that one portion of the roof which is actually being framed up against the existing, that cricket there, which they show.
Can you go back to the picture of the house?
The current picture or the future?
Yeah, the
record?
current picture of the house. Are there railings in the front of the house?
There's a wrought iron rail at the center.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't agree that we need to, that we should specify it's white or painted white. I mean, it could be black, it could be wood. I don't think that's. I mean, there's already a wrought iron there. That's just my, I don't know if we need to be that specific on the type of.
I just worry if we don't have,
Yeah,
we
it's going
don't
on the
have
back of the
some,
house, that's the side of the house. It's
something
going on
in the
that brick
resolution.
patio, it's going right there, right?
Right.
Right.
You just don't want to see any exposed framing lumber. You want to see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't,
Finish.
that's fair.
I agree with the plating of the.
Yeah.
And the.
We can put in that the stair and railing will be of a comparable material and design. And if Joe has any questions, that could potentially be a chair sign off if there's a clarification that comes through. Anything else, board, that we should be, talking about? They show the gutters. I think the rendering is pretty helpful. Is that deck that's off to the side, is that part of what we're reviewing here? Because that would be,
That looks like a picture of an existing system.
That's probably a stock.
okay, that's what
Yeah.
that is. Got it.
On the guttering, it just shows it dropping into the grass there. Is this, that guttering, I'm assuming, is only picking up water from that extension from the sunroom, not from anywhere else?
Downside?
The downspout, yeah.
By the,
I'm
yeah,
just thinking about like the rain we've had today and.
Yeah,
I think Joe will probably look at that. During building department.
right. It does show two gutters on each, symmetrically situated on each side of the structure.
That's the same kit they're purchasing, right?
That's the kit.
yes.
That's what it will look like, right? Which is super helpful. I think that's
Yeah.
really what gives us the ability to look at this.
I totally wrong. What is this, Joyce? Sunroom?
It's in the agenda. You can click on the link. It's there. Okay, so can I have a motion to open a public hearing on this application?
Bobby Bowker making a motion over public hearing.
Brenda Barbach, second the motion.
Any objections? No objections. We're in a public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak to this application from the public? Don't see anybody here. You're on Zoom. You can use the hand raise function if you'd like to speak to this application. I do not see any hands. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing on this application?
Nina Aaron, second the motion.
Any objections? No objections. The public hearing is closed. So we've listed out a handful of conditions related to the plating of any exposed wood and related to the appropriateness of the stair and railing coming off the side of the structure. And did we clarify on the roof color? Was the roof, I apologize.
You have the actually existing.
We have smashed existing. Okay, so are there any other comments or questions from the board on the application? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the application with those conditions?
Nina Aaron, motion to approve the application with the conditions as listed.
Bobby Bowker has seconded the motion.
And a roll call.
Nina Aaron, Robert Bowker.
Aye.
Brenda Burback. Aye. Bill Moran. Carla Elliott. Aye. Chair Rodney.
All right, very good. Motion carries. You guys are all set. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Well done.
You did a good job.
That's great.
All right, with that, we are going to move now to continuing business. So the first continuing business item on the agenda is Planning Board 07-2023 and BAR 03-2023. This is 14 Church Street, and we do have one recusal. All right, so we got JB back, and I think before you come up, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong set of notes here. If Valerie, could you just give us an update based on where we are from the prior meetings?
So all site plan issues have pretty much been dealt with. And at this point, we are at the Board of Architectural Review. If you recall, this board has wanted to look at applicable changes to the architecture. And so that's the only thing that remains at this point in time.
Okay, and then as far as what we have kind of before us tonight, we kind of have the full list of approvals, right? So we have the site plan, which you mentioned,
Conditional use.
right?
And Board of Architectural Review approval. And then if ultimately you decide to move forward with an approval, a negative declaration would also be issued.
Okay, and a parking waiver is also being
Yes.
requested. Okay.
Not in that order.
Not in that order, right? I think it's negative deck neg deck would be the first. And then everything else follows. Okay, all right, so JB, can you walk us through kind of where we've landed at this point?
Yes, go to the A300, there's some renderings of what the changes that we have discussed with the board. Those were architectural, we did work and learn that having different alignments, but once you see the building and that's really rendering, only when you're across the street, then you will know that the misalignment of the windows in the front, it's just the windows in the top. And we felt that the form on the top was more important than trying to align the door and the windows at the bottom. We did wrap around, we did brick, the new brick. We did show the privacy walls between the apartments and the balcony. And we did also provide different rooms. So I think that's much more going along with the neighboring properties. And then we also, one of the requests in tonight, to make sure that we even show a view from the high school side.
Mhm.
I think that's one that probably went by, but
Did we see that?
that thing was one for that. This existing photos. What was the rear?
Well, there. Right.
Oh, I see. So that's the
That's where you will see.
roof line above.
The roof line above, that yellow is the roof line above.
Right, yep.
Lucy's. Well, I don't like that.
But in reality, when you, again, I mean, you're looking at a frontal elevation, which is in reality, when you drive by and you probably won't see that. If you're.
What do you, like, what's behind, so I see the kind of light yellow and then there's like orange, like what's behind Lucy's now, if before you build that up, what does it look like? It's lower,
Oh, it's
You don't
just a-
see anything.
Yeah.
it's just the sky.
The way the street slopes down, the existing building is lower.
Okay.
And we don't have I thought maybe we were getting a view looking down from Church Street, just kind of that approach down Church Street, which I guess you'd only do on foot because it's a one-way street driving. Okay,
You can go down to the-
can I just ask a couple, and a couple questions while we're here? So, the brick that you're returning at the driveway side, it's like a buff brick that you're proposing just for that vertical portion of the wall. What's there right now? Is that stuccoed right now, that portion?
Oh, at the bottom?
Yeah,
Bottom right, yeah.
No, it's painted brick.
it's painted brick. And so are you proposing coating the brick or replacing it or replatting it? That's not no change.
Yeah.
So that's existing a buff coated brick that's gonna be, okay, I maybe misread that. And so how big is that return of the red brick? Is that shown on that, maybe that side elevation? It's hard to tell in the rendering. You're not gonna see the butt edge of the thin brick, right? You're gonna have a corner there in
Right,
return.
Yes, that's what we did the whole return here, so we don't have that, and then you return the brick. And then you see the rest will be kind of recessed at this time.
So I guess, right, so actually the question I was asking is about an existing condition, so that's just that return brick of the street facing red. And so that's no,
Yeah.
you're not doing any work or any change. I'm assuming you haven't identified any brick matches or brick samples, because you're keeping the existing and we're trying to, this rendering shows everything identical. And I think if it's not a really good match, that's gonna be, it's gonna read very strongly. I think.
Well, we can, I guess when we're ready to do that as part of the job, we can always submit to the board.
That's what I was going to suggest, and that's what we've done in the past with brick projects, is to have as a condition of any approval that there would be, maybe even, it doesn't have to be the entire board, but maybe we can even elect like 1 or 2 or 3 members of the board just to review it and give it an okay. So we can look at that as if we get to that point tonight. Yeah.
So on the other side, so this is what is the other side? Look, that's the roof line above the street, is it the same? Buff yellow on the other side,
it's,
on the top.
Yeah, there's gonna be a stock of much in that color.
The return though, the return of that, what does that return wall
Oh,
look
no,
like
no,
over?
You're talking about the stock on the back?
Oh, no, up when you're on the other side of the building, not in the rear,
Yeah,
on the
on the
other
other
side.
On the honey side,
On what?
so on the on the Lucy side.
On the Lucid side.
Yeah,
What is it gonna be?
oh, no, it's gonna be a stock.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
stucco?
We just look at the side
So
elevation.
you're gonna have 3 different kinds of,
Are you talking about here or are you talking about?
The opposite
here?
side.
I think What you're
Right
seeing
there,
over
right
is
there.
there.
what is that gonna be?
it's gonna be a stock.
So, right, and so that's that return of that red. You're, can we go all the way
Oh,
over there?
okay, yes, I mean, if you want that as a condition, we will return that. Return
I
it,
just-
correct, but I don't think that,
So it's 3 different, so the back is not stucco, right? It's painted brick.
if the existing bottom is painted right there.
So you're gonna have 3 different. You're gonna have stucco, painted brick and brick. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because the brick and the stucco, I mean, the painted brick and the stucco will be the same color, they're recessed plane. They're not on the same plane, they're not adjacent to each other.
You definitely don't want it to be monotone and all like one homogeneous look. I understand the different materials, and cost is a factor too. If you wanted to cover that whole thing with brick veneer, it'd be like 10
Yeah,
times the cost.
we did bring that up.
I mean, it's a big improvement from 3 or 4 meetings ago. It's a big time.
100%.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. It's a big improvement.
I'm looking at this elevation, which I think is the one, it's probably the one, it's the first time we're seeing this rendering.
Yeah.
I think that the,
Well, if there is something where, if that was correct,
I'm not even sure, like, I'm not sure that it's,
The yellow kind of blends in with the skyline.
I'm almost just looking at the cornice structure where you kind of have that abrupt change there, and maybe if that line was continued.
that,
A little
I would say
heavier,
that
but-
having the return be right. And actually, like, I do think that driving through Highland, on the sidewalk or whatever the Chinese president, you're never gonna see.
You're not gonna see it, no, you're driving down.
So if you have the returns that, I mean, I can have that, right, so you carry the same model, you know. The whole quality.
I mean, how would board members think? I mean, I'm not convinced that brick is needed there. I think I agree with what you guys are saying, which is you're returning it, whatever, and I don't know if that's mentioned at 8 I'm sure it is somewhere in your drawings, but 18 inches with the red bricks, you kind of see that, you know, it's a facade, and that's not, you know, you have your primary and you have your secondary, and your secondary is buff and your primary is red. And I realize there's some stucco and some brick, but I kind of think that that's kind of consistent with a building like this.
Yep.
And maybe it's just the way that this rendering was done. There's like a white line between the two, the coping and the cornice, and maybe that's throwing me off.
Yeah,
I don't know if that line wants to continue all the way across. Maybe it just doesn't. Maybe that's just a graphic issue that's throwing me off.
I think I've just thrown up because there's actually no finish shown in this rendering. It's just colored in.
Right. It's very stark, and
Yeah.
the contrast between this building and
And
It's-
Lucy's,
yeah.
it's, I mean, it's so ornate and then it's like this.
but,
Wow.
right, but this building, I mean, it has elevation. You never see the ornate and the stucco together.
I'm almost wondering if, well, this is an existing color, right? That buff is what you already have in the building. Okay, so that's,
And it's a little bit, I mean, this is also a rendering, the buff colors a little bit darker than the yellow.
yeah, I'm almost thinking it'll kind of just disappear into the background. The only, you know, looking at this view also, you don't have anything on the roof. There's no mechanical equipment, there's no chimneys, there's no anything. So that's an accurate portrayal of what this will look like. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I know we spoke last time about the asymmetries, which you spoke to here. I think the renderings are helpful, and I get that you're not going to have that lineup, and I don't think it bothers me when I look at those photos. Other board member questions on the BAR components? So let's just kind of, yeah.
I'm not sure it falls under the BAR, but I did just wonder if, and maybe it falls under the site plan that you're saying has resolved the EAC comments, because they had a few stormwater and garbage and trees and shrubs, and were they all addressed?
They're all recommendations for the planning board, so ultimately you can decide which ones you want them to address or not address. I know stormwater has been addressed.
Yeah, they tie into the existing system, right?
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
one of the comments related to landscape, existing landscaping, there is no. I think we're referring either to the site next door or to the street landscape. There's no landscaping on the site. There's not a possibility.
Right, I think we spoke a little bit about that last meeting,
Right.
with the trees, you know, the street trees, which is not on the site, and there's a planted area just directly adjacent on the lot line, but that's part of the driveway of the adjacent property. This is like a really built out to, you know, the full lot line.
And the garbage, I don't remember quite what.
The garbage will be, there's some inside and will be brought out to the street.
Is that what's happening now?
I don't know. What is going on.
Right, and I think we did touch on that last time, because that was a comment, I think, from staff, from the EAC, and so that was the change in that.
Right, and I think that depends on what's gonna take place down there, so we can make that a condition of approval that garbage needs to be finalized with the village.
Who's responsible for taking it out to the street?
Who's responsible for taking it out to
Right
the
now, I
street?
believe there.
So the individual homeowners.
No,
Or
the
the management.
the management company.
Okay.
And I think, okay. Other questions? I mean, and obviously site plan questions are welcome. So I think we're really, I think our goal today is to really wrap up our conversation on this. We've spent a lot of time here, and I think we've been very thorough. Okay. Sorry, were you about to talk about that?
No, I was just wondering what the parking waiver was.
I think that's a perfect question to ask, and we can talk a little bit about that. So I think we touched on this and JB, I know you've spoken to this before, but maybe it'd be helpful for you, just wanted to go through real quickly. You know, there's a parking waiver request on this application. Just to kind of review what the parameters of that request are. And we can just speak briefly about what the code kind of dictates in its current form for us
We
in these
have,
applications.
yeah, we have submitted on them on the CAS, basically the parking waiver.
Maddie, can we maybe put their memo up?
Talks about is that we have to meet certain criteria. A, the change it from one permitted conditional use to another permitted conditional use. Yes, the dwelling units are permitted conditional use in the village center district. Second, that the proposal does not involve construction or addition that will take away any parking, existing parking or impede any parking. No parking spaces are being removed. Then.
Is this the right memo? This is.
I don't think it is. I think there's one specifically about the parking
It's go up,
requests.
go up. It says parking waiver memo.
And also that the proposal result in the loss of existing parking spaces, again, no parking spaces have been moved. The addition is within the existing footprint. In the, let's say, the new use shall continue to have access to the parking spaces to which specific use is located, so. The availability of parking spaces has not been modified.
Okay, and can we just kind of reiterate what the actual waiver request is for your application?
Was it 8? It's 4 2-bedrooms, right?
Huh?
It's 4 2-bedroom apartments.
Yeah, but I think there was a second number of. I think if you go to, maybe under the. Referral sheet. I think it would go like 20. Sorry.
6 additional. Okay, so we're looking at an addition. How is that 6 calculated? Just
Yes, that's it. Right now it's proposed for apartments. So there used to be a total required of 10, now will be a total required of 16. It's 4 2-bedrooms, that was 1.5.
okay, so it's for the additional
Yeah,
bedrooms that are being added.
So it's 4 2-bedroom total, or 6 2-bedrooms total.
total in the building?
Yeah.
No, it's, I believe it's 12.
They're added for.
Yeah.
Okay. That's 12.
Right, so our waiver, the request for the waiver is for what they're adding, not for what's already
And
there.
how many parking spaces are there now?
Right now,
0.
There's no parking spaces for the building at all.
No.
Oh, okay.
Correct. There are no parking spaces. They're not doing any work that would eliminate any existing parking spaces, because there aren't. They have access to the existing parking that they have because they don't have any.
And it used to be
Okay.
commercial, with buy more parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's much clearer
Yeah,
now.
and jokes aside, part of how this section of the code is written, it says that if it meets those criteria, which I think we've demonstrated and the applicant has demonstrated they do, we shall grant it. So it's not, we can if we want to. It's not really at our discretion. They either meet or they don't. So that's I think a helpful conversation and a helpful question. I think we can just talk really again once more about conditional use. That's but conditional use here is residential. So I think that we've looked at that, but is there anything specific that we should be deliberating or discussing on that before we move forward here?
There's no specific requirements except that you're not supposed to have residential on the first floor, which they're not proposing. And this application was a similar project was also approved for this particular site, also giving conditional use approval for residential. So
Right, which is helpful and not unusual for this neighborhood. And I think, I think it's a good way to bring people into that area. It's consistent with neighborhood use. Okay. So, sorry, I just want to make sure we're kind of checking all of our boxes here. So I think as far as managing these, these various approvals that we've just talked about, is there an obligation for us to have the neg deck vote separately and before we do any of the others? Or is this something that we can really group together?
Yeah, let's do the neg deck first.
Okay, and the neg deck,
And if you remember, at the last meeting, Valerie walked you through, went through the part 2.
Right.
On this application, and it's sort of a unique one because there's really it's just a 3rd floor on top of an existing building. So there's no new site disturbance or anything like that. I think that influenced a lot of what we discussed going through the part 2 in secret.
right, and I think that there was, we had a small group last meeting, and there was a feeling that we maybe hadn't, we could have moved forward last meeting, but there was not necessarily any penalty to the applicant to put that off to that. Procedurally, I just want to be clear. So we can vote on a neg deck before we close out the public hearing, correct? Because that's not a requirement of the neg deck.
You can do it either
Yeah,
way. You can do the
okay.
public hearing first and.
Okay, so I guess given where we are, and I think given where the conversation is, I think I'm confident. Can we just have a motion to open the public hearing?
Bobby Bowker, a second motion.
Any objections? No objections, motion carries. We're on a public hearing. Is there anybody in the room to speak to this application tonight? There is not in the room. Is there anybody on Zoom who would like to speak to this application? You can use the hand raise function. I do not see any hands. All right, so given where we are with this application, can I have a motion to close the public hearing on this application? And a second?
Nina Aaron, second.
All right, the motion carries. All right, so
You didn't actually vote on the motion.
what's that?
You just had you had a motion and a second. You didn't vote.
Oh, I didn't. All right, and well, no, I said that was just a close. I think I said
I
any
know, but you still
objections.
didn't.
I didn't
Okay,
even say
hear
that.
Any objections? No,
Maybe I didn't. Are there any objections?
no, okay.
No objections. Okay, the motion carries. Sorry, my bad. I may have been
You
speaking too
skipped the no
quickly.
objections.
Oops, I just fixed that. So, all right, sorry about that. Okay, so based on that, though, I just want to make sure that we are, okay, so are there any other questions that I realize we've done this to death. I just want to make sure from staff, no other questions that haven't asked or any territory we haven't covered. Okay, so can we start then with a motion to approve the negative declaration that we've reviewed in detail, including walking through all steps of last week?
Bobby Bowker making a motion to approve neg deck as stated.
And a second,
Brenda Burback, I second the motion.
and for this, we will do a roll call.
Nina Aaron,
I,
Robert Bowker.
Aye.
Robert Burbank,
Aye.
Bill Maria, and Chair Roy.
All right, very good. So the motion carries. Now, the next group of approvals, I think we can loop together. So I think we've looked at the site plan, we've looked at the parking waiver, the conditional use, and the BAR. As far as conditions, I think we noted we have conditions, I think do we have any conditions remaining in the Keller Sessions memo?
No.
No, we're closed on that. So the BAR, I think we discussed a condition for approval of a brick sample
Yes.
to match the existing.
Yeah, I have submit samples of brick before building permit, and then I have garbage collection needs to be confirmed with the village prior to signing of the site.
Okay. So,
Wasn't there also getting permits from the village or the dumpster? Yeah.
right, during construction.
Or working with the.
Okay. So with those conditions listed, can we have a motion to approve? Just make sure we're saying this correctly. Conditional use, BAR, parking waiver, and site plan.
Yes, Bobby Bowker making a motion to approve site plan, conditional use and BAR with conditions based on
Parking
brick selection,
And the-
parking waiver, and conditional use on garbage selection, dumpster permit, and brick selection to be verified before installation.
Nicely said.
Brenda Burbine, I second that. motion.
We got the easier job. A roll call.
Nina Aaron,
Aye.
Robert Bowker.
Aye.
Brenda Burback. Aye. Bill Maria. Chair Roy.
Very good. Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
One thing. Didn't Stuart want separate votes for BAR and planning board? I know what he said, yeah, well, when I said I hadn't been doing that, he was.
Right, who wanted it? So can we just do one,
Do BAR.
So we'll do a separate BAR.
No, yeah, I was
Vote.
just gonna say, what about parking maybe? That's it.
We did,
As part of
Parks
the
and Rec in
planning
there.
board.
Right.
Right. So-
because of our two roles as
Yes,
planning
I think
board,
Stuart was
understood. Okay,
separated.
I understand. And
Yeah.
that's, well, I'll make that note moving forward as well, but we'll do that here. We have a motion for the planning board approval of the BAR approval.
Just voted. Someone can say yes.
Motions for PAR approval.
Bobby Backer, I second.
I'm assuming that that motion was with the conditions that were listed.
With the conditions listed,
For selected.
Yeah.
It's,
selection, the brick selection must be approved.
Yes.
Okay.
all right, so.
Right, that's a BAR.
It was motioned and it was seconded. Can we have a roll call?
Nina Aaron,
Aye.
Robert Bowker.
Aye.
Brenda Burback.
I,
Bill Maria.
Aye.
Chair Roy.
Aye, so the BAR is approved as well. Motion carries. This time I'll really mean it. Good luck. Thanks, JB. All right, so let's move forward. So we're gonna now go to Planning Board 08/2023. And this is 196 North Highland Avenue. And I guess you're not going anywhere. So
you're a one man show.
very, very busy. Can we, actually, Valerie, if you can give us just a, again, just give us the brief update with where this application is, compared to the last time we saw it, and then after that, I'll let you walk through the new materials that you provided for us, JB.
Yeah, so I think the applicant is still, so there are still some outstanding questions associated with engineering. We did send out, this project to both New York State Department of Transportation as well as the fire department. We have not received responses from either one. But in terms of seeker, if the board wants to move forward, we would recommend that we can provide you a part 2 and part 3 once the erosion sediment control plan and proposed grading plan are reviewed by the engineer. And so Tony could talk tonight about where that stands. And then we still have some outstanding questions, especially dealing with the landscaping, trash location. So some other elements that still need to be addressed in terms of our site plan approval.
Yeah.
Review.
Tony?
So as you know, there's still a significant amount of engineering comments. Just one thing I want to note, because it could change your layout. Your wall, your heel wall is still protruding onto the neighboring property.
We are talking to,
Yeah.
we went through your comments, we are. Talking to engineer for that,
Okay,
so you think that needs to be changed in that.
because that could ultimately change your layout if you have to pull those walls in.
Yeah.
I saw that you started to work through the sewer. We're gonna need more detail on the sewer, the rims, the inverts, profiles.
Yes.
Those are the big things. And DOT, I don't know if you've reached out to DOT, if you're engaging them yet.
Yes.
You are. Okay, that's a big. That's a
Right.
big.
That's the way it happens much like as you guys. have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did.
Yeah.
So,
Your engineering, there are some issues with the engineering, tying certain pipes into the proper spots. I think right now you're bypassing the panel, small makes existing without going to the treatment first.
Yeah, I think that we didn't mean to confuse things, but I think some of those main faults because we have to deal with the sewer easement. So
Okay.
that's what, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that was the big thing with the wall, the sheeting. Again, that's something you have to look at the sheeting of the walls, because again, you're going through the footings with those where they're shown now. And you said you will be preparing a swim.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah,
are,
there were a lot of comments.
there's a lot of comments,
Yeah.
30 comments, but I won't go through everything. A lot of them, just, detail oriented, plans, we still need a lighting plan. I think that's it, just more detail. A lot of them detail oriented comments.
So the lighting plan is important, and that's part of our
Yeah.
their secret review. And Okay,
I think mostly what I had for this board was, we have created some treaties so we can have a better reading.
yeah,
And the building. And we added a door to the front, like.
can we put those new, I guess the renderings is probably the place to start.
Work with engineering, but have to make sure that we address these, incoming and more.
You're saying you work out the building before you go too far, it's understandable. I'm also concerned with the fire department, just because there are
Those
lines going out the front, that's why we keep saying, nice, that'd be nice to hear the fire department.
I know, maybe what I'll do is I'll reach out to the fire department and see if we could just schedule a meeting.
Yeah.
Please, that's all.
These are the updated elevations, but yeah, let's go into the
Yeah.
renderings,
See, we added,
which
yeah,
we've asked for.
these.
So. I think, well, it's first of all, it's, I kind of wish we'd had these a little sooner, because this is, it's a weird. There's some, kind of unusual geometries going on here, and it's been hard to kind of really. Yeah. And even just like that, the entrance and the driveway side, and I think one of the things that we've talked about here, and I think it's sticking. I mean, there's I think a bunch that we can get into. But if it like the that whole cutout for the driveway, we can go kind of, I think there's one view. Yeah. It just
It's just.
it seems so off balance. It's like we're just gonna cut out a little notch to get the driveway in there and just build the rest of the house over. And I just
All the evidence.
yeah, and which was
Well, actually, we can go the other way. We can make that piece of the building much narrower, so the overhang is much now, because what you have behind the wall is parking. So maybe we were trying to too much to make that look like a wall. Maybe have to look like a tunnel, like what it is.
right. Or I mean, I don't know if there's a way to set back that wall so it's more of like a bay protruding out of that north side of the building, and that you still have a vertical line. You'd have to work on the roof. I just think that there's and you're right, because that's a screen wall, right? Where we're
Yes,
looking at that
yes.
red tree. That's a
Right.
yeah.
Maybe, like as we discuss this here, like maybe it should have to be what it is, a column.
Maybe I also want to, I think the reason I think that you did that in the first place was so that you didn't look like you're staring right into a parking garage. So like, I don't necessarily object to that, but I do think that there might be a way of having, you might lose a little bit of square footage, but setting that whole that kind of protruding piece back, even just a couple of feet, so that as it sticks out, it almost looks like a bay on that north side of the building, that you can kind of keep the linear geometry. You'd have to adjust the mansard and the dormer, facing Route 9. But it just seems off.
I just want to add to it, I just kind of noticed, is that overhang actually going over the driveway aisle?
Yes,
Is that going to be an issue with delivery trucks, the height?
no, we have no room. But we can.
Because that might be
we
something
can
fire
show that,
department
yeah, we
might.
can
I was
show-
gonna say it's something else for the fire
Yeah.
department to look at.
14, the fire department, I think is 14 foot clear.
And I think we don't show that, but at a certain point there was measurement of the wires as well in the street. So. Like that for the fire department, because we know that too, that 14 foot clear and that's what we get.
Yeah, just can see that corner getting hit now that I'm looking at this rendering closer. Even, Amazon truck, it's that corner, somebody's gonna get a wake up,
Or a fire truck.
or a fire truck, yeah.
And don't we did have another resolution on the other direction as well.
Which direction? The
No,
back?
you just added that there was a question this time about what that house needs to look like. Prior to this.
Right. And is there, maybe this rendering was done before you adjusted the door in the front of the building? Because I don't see any pathways or kind of connection to the street other than the residential entrance.
Yeah, we did more than issue, but this meeting is good.
And just a general concern or kind of comment is just, it's very, very bright white. And it's a big kind of, very planar facade. Just wonder how this will actually read, if maybe there's a coloration or a way to break up the windows a little bit. I don't know, it just seems, when I first saw these,
That's the look you see like in a single family residential house that's being renovated now, right? That's the look everyone's going with. I don't know if it really fits on a commercial structure like that on a big reg. Looks out of place.
Well, I thought Manson room, but this is, I mean, you go up and down an avenue, there is.
No, it looks nice, but it looks like in a suburban like setting, like driving around Pleasantville to see a house that looks like that.
It looks more like a house than a.
Or maybe that's the intent, maybe it's the intent.
Well, I mean, we do have mostly residential on that side.
but this is I very much related to a comment I think that we've had all along here, which is that, we have this teeny little commercial space and we're kind of like pulling teeth to get this, a path or a connection to the sidewalk and the public, and, part of, this district is, it's commercial on the ground floor. This is a commercial corridor. We want, to kind of invite businesses to be in this area. And if we build effectively a house, teeny little, kind of commercial space and, hiding the door to get there, I don't think that accomplishes that. And I think that the overall architecture of the space of the structure is saying the exact same thing. I'm a house, stay away from me. Like, don't knock on my front door. And I think we really want to be looking at something that engages the public and doesn't just kind of stand off to the side as another house. And granted, there are other houses and buildings that have been built in the past, but we're trying to kind of understand what we want this to become. And I feel like the design should be more receptive to that. Maybe that's taking that, whatever, it looks like there's a masonry cladding at the base and bring that up a little bit higher, so we kind of like see that the ground level is there. But a way of demarcating, that this is.
The commercial.
Yeah.
There is no separation.
Yeah.
And maybe somewhere in there, it could help you figure out, resolve that awkward, step. Maybe, the finish below that level is something different and it makes that step feel less accidental or I don't know,
So it seems like we keep going back to the same, the relationship between that and the materials.
Yeah, we do. Other board comments or questions that I do think that, there's a lot going on kind of in terms of the site plan that needs to be developed and worked out. Those are outlined and largely in Tony's comments and also in Valerie's comments earlier. And we didn't talk a lot about the landscaping, but that's been
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, no, because it's really I think that's huge here. And
Yeah, I mean, a few things. I see that you're looking to keep 33 trees, but you're taking 20 out.
We're not taking further.
It said on the plan that there were trees coming out, I thought.
No, I want to have to find out that it's.
Yeah, show a picture of the site now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's no street.
So and then you have you also have that you're putting in wintergreen barberry. That is not on the invasive species. That particular barberry is not on the invasive species here. It is in DC. I really wouldn't recommend a barberry.
So which one was this?
It was the wintergreen barberry. And there is another barberry which is on the invasive species list already here. And this one is becoming that way. So I would take that out and find something else. The New York DEC has a list of recommended natives that you could pick from.
Yeah, I thought we did select these from the reception. Recommended?
Not that barberry, I don't believe so, because it's,
Okay.
That's what you're saying, I heard the.
Yeah, we always.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think it's any tree.
No, there is no.
Yeah.
so that is wrong.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because
The
it's-
site now, it's cleared out. It's
Yeah, the site
thrown
is
out there.
Yeah, so that tree removal, that
Yeah, that won't have to be.
And then there's not, and I was surprised to see 33 trees on there to remain because I thought the same thing driving past. So yeah, that needs to be updated. So as a result, a lot of your tree protection is also irrelevant, I would think. Right,
But one of the things that we've raised is one, if there's room for the arborvitae, and then also just the fact that you're having the arborvitae, a lot of it, and access
Yeah,
to irrigation and stuff, so none of that, so that still needs to be addressed.
I'd love to not see all that arborvitae. I'm so sick of it.
I agree entirely.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And
and the
20
deer
years.
do eat them.
No, and when we've heard from the public on this project, it's the folks living on the other side and just having a bunch of, cookie cutter trees. It's not really gonna help to screen. Okay. While we're on this, can we just have a motion to reopen the public hearing? So just make sure there's nobody here who wants to talk tonight.
Bobby Bowker reopening public hearing, making a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Nina Aaron second.
Any objections? No objections. We're in a public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak to this application? I don't believe so. Is there anybody on Zoom? You can use the hand raise function. I don't see anybody on Zoom. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Nina Aaron motion to adjourn public hearing.
Bobby Bowker, a second.
Okay, so I think we've given you, sufficient feedback to come back with some changes, and hopefully we can take another look at this next meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn this application for tonight?
Make your motion to adjourn this location to the next meeting.
Bobby Bowker, a second.
Any objections? No objections, the motion carries. All right, very good. Thanks, JP.
Thanks.
All right. We are going to keep moving forward here. So our next item on the agenda is 142, 144 South Highland, the other side of Highland. And this is for Popeyes, and I'm imagining the applicant is online for this, is on Zoom.
Can you raise your hand? You're the applicant for Popeyes?
You're here for Popeyes, you can use the hand raise function. No, do we have an applicant for this?
So the applicant did email the other day asking what the next steps are in the process. We did explain to them that the next steps, that they do need, ultimately, they will need a referral from this board to the ZBA, and at that point, they begin the ZBA process. I don't know if they assume that they need to appear tonight. They're still working on the traffic study. They still need to provide that information. I know you still had some additional questions.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of, drainage, and I'm concerned about some of the boards and the awnings being constructed over pipe, even though they claim it's steep, that's still gonna be a maintenance issue for the village to have to take care of one day. There's no easements on any of those pipes.
Right.
So there's a bit of concern there with all those.
Is it possible for us to make a zoning referral without the applicant here?
I don't know that you're ready to make the zoning referral yet
Yeah.
until you get the traffic study.
Yeah, that's very important.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, it just means that we'll see this again. Maybe this gives them the time to get the traffic study and a little more information before
one
we
of
see
the
them again.
variances, it does revolve around the 2-foot setback for the driveway. So
Right.
if that ultimately needs to get changed.
Right.
And then we also, again, they need to start working with New York State DOT as well because of those different.
Okay. Then I guess they're not here, and we'll wait and just adjourn this to it will, because they're not here, it'll be automatically adjourned to our next meeting. So with that, then we'll move on to 9 Brookville. Yes, this is 12, Planning Board 12-2023. So you guys can come up. I know that just gonna, between Valerie and Tony, I know that we got something late this at least showed up on the agenda, I think, today. So can we kind of just get an overview of where that is?
Yeah, so so Tony's firm's really been dealing with the wetlands. So I'm gonna turn that over to Tony, but just in terms of process and procedure, we did talk to Jan. I mean, we could, if needed, put conditions of approval on and then have the applicant work with Colored Sessions. So, but that's up to the board, and if you feel comfortable with this current status of the application, and Tony can talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, a lot of these conditions, they're not big red flags, it's just some detail that need to be addressed. I didn't have a chance to really look at the new plans that came in. They came in at 5, I think. The biggest thing for me was the wall design. It is being constructed on a steep slope. Just want to make sure that the calculations reflect that. Because when I looked at the calculations, it's on a flat surface. But that footing is getting constructed on a wall. Got to make sure that's all in place. So I haven't really had a chance to see how that was addressed.
Right, and so just from from our perspective as a board and kind of what we're being asked to look at. So I mean, obviously it's a retaining wall that needs a wetlands permit, right? So, and I realize, Tony, you guys have had several different comments and have been back and forth. But as far as specific to the wetlands approval, and the mitigation plan was submitted today, but that's not been reviewed yet, I'm assuming because it was.
It was.
Yeah,
Was it reviewed? You did review it.
He's happy with the mitigation.
He did, oh, he did,
He had
okay,
just a couple of comments, but he said in general, he was happy with the mitigation plan.
Yeah,
okay,
kind of grabbed me out, like running out the door. Yeah.
got it, I'm sorry.
I should
Um,
have said that. Apologize.
No, it's all right. But that's critical. So maybe, I guess, I know if you guys, are here, I realize you're the applicant and professional. So maybe we can just put the new applicant, the new submissions up on the board screen. We can just walk through and really kind of make sure we understand what we're talking about, looking at. So maybe we can just start with what was just submitted,
This would be all the previous stuff. This is.
Yeah.
is that not updated? I saw something on the agenda this afternoon.
I think Jamie might have sent.
There was an updated agenda sent like late today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jamie sent an updated plan.
Yeah, there it goes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Tony, I don't know if you could maybe just like walk us through, or I guess if you guys want to just walk us through what was being proposed, or what's
What we proposed, the 2 retaining walls indicated at the top of the plan. The drainage from the house is going to be carried parallel to the long side of the property, heading, I guess, it's northeast. And then it's going to dump out into that leaching pit on the far right hand side. That'll take all of these water separate from the wall system in the backyard. So if you have a plan to show the piping and details.
I'm sorry, gentlemen, and meanwhile, would you mind just stating your name and
Oh, I'm sorry.
for the record?
Steve Watt, Green Tech Man, the site, owner operator.
Justin, property owner.
So what are we're looking at the remediation in? The remediation
Yeah,
plan?
those are the.
The
several
mitigation,
plans.
right, the mediation or the mitigation?
We were just on the mitigation, so now we're going back here.
Plan, I think that was just up.
Okay.
Structural plan. There it is, yeah, that's. You see the 2 corners of the garage there, there's 2 catch basins, the dark squares right there, yeah. And yeah, one could be connected to the other, then it would go, follow the red line across, it goes to the leaching pit in the ground. Be 6 feet by 3 foot leaching pit, surrounded 5 feet of riprap gravel. And basically the water will enter that when it fills up, and it mounts to the top and so forth, and run into the stream. The same goes for the wall, the leaching pit at the bottom of the wall in the center there. So there's two separate drainage systems there. The house drainage is all going to one leaching pit, and the other, all of the yard water and sheet flows will go into the center leaching pit.
So your wall footing is gonna be tied to that pit?
Yep.
Tied to that one, okay, yeah, that's one thing I asked, but I think you just kind of show them where that goes.
Yeah,
So,
So there's a large, that 22 maple tree stump had to be removed, so it kind of works out. But I have to take the stuff out anyway.
It's a stop, but no trees or any other, no trees are being disturbed.
Was cut down for a separate project.
Okay, no, that's fine. This is not part of this application.
No,
So
that's,
that 22 maple actually is just as.
Okay,
the roof leader gonna definitely help you now, because I noticed, I had visited the site, and that was part of the fight, roof leader was shooting out the first wall, and I
yeah,
knew
that's
that.
just run right through the wall.
Yeah.
And yes, settle down and coming out behind the wall now, that's
Yeah.
when it bites.
okay. Board members, questions?
I was just trying to get into the EAC recommendations.
Yes, those also came this afternoon as well.
Okay.
Oh,
Can we,
We just got them. this afternoon. They're rather short.
yeah.
Sure.
And just for the benefit of the public,
Yeah.
the board is trying to
Yeah.
address this application. We normally would never consider things that had just been provided today. This is an emergency situation. There's a dangerous condition out there. It's a safety, health and safety concern. And since this board doesn't meet again for 2 months, we're trying to work with the applicant and their consultants. But just for the record, thank you.
I was gonna go there, but that's better said by you. Yeah. thank you.
Under normal circumstances, this board would never consider things that were just provided, even days before the meeting, much less the day of the meeting.
I mean,
Right.
one of the things that we could do is have, if the board is open, we could have Jan also review the EAC's recommendation. He was at the EAC meeting. Can take a look at incorporating any other additional recommendations that's necessary into the mitigation plan as part of the condition of approval.
I think that's a good idea. You can do, if you want to move ahead tonight so they can get this work done and make things safe again. You can certainly have a condition that allows your wetland consultant to sort of add conditions or review things. So they basically have to amend the plans to his satisfaction.
Right.
Yeah.
And I believe that EAC knows is entirely about the planting recommendations once
Right.
the construction's completed.
So I think-
Their discussion.
Right, so the conditions can be that both the remediation plan be modified to address any outstanding Keller Sessions comments, and the mitigation plan be revised again to address any comments from Keller Sessions, and those that have already been issued and any additional that they, so it's revised to Keller Sessions satisfaction.
And maybe specifically revised to Keller Sessions satisfaction within, while incorporating the feedback
From
from
the
the
EAC,
EAC.
correct.
Right. Okay, no, and I think that's important, and actually the weather over the last couple of weeks and kind of.
Has
the
shown us
news-
how
The
important
news
this
stories
is.
that we've been
Yeah.
looking at, and the fact that couldn't drive on the Bear Mountain Parkway for a week.
I was on it like an hour before.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's my daughter, who's afraid of traffic circles, was driving with me, and like she finally was like, "All right, Dad, I'm going to do this with you." And we got on Ansville Circle, and we're going around, and like, get out. Oh, so she's like going around a couple times. So she's good with them now, but
we were coming back from Pennsylvania. We were on that road an hour before.
oh my God,
My GPS turned me around and took me to 9 on the other side of the road.
yeah, no,
That's, Yeah, I was coming back from.
No, and it
Syracuse.
rained pretty hard this afternoon too.
It did.
So, I
Poor
just,
Justin's equipped.
yeah,
So-
I think the concern and, but Maddie, you asked us to make sure we did this, so, you know,
Yeah.
the. 2 months is too long to wait at this time of year where we're getting these severe storms.
Right.
Absolutely.
No, right. We don't want to be hearing about the rest of this hillside winding up in the Sing Sing Kill. So,
We understand the concern.
Right.
You're more, I want that.
no.
You
Um,
especially.
Okay, so, all right, procedurally, we need to reopen. Well, first of all, I mean, we've spoken about these items, board members, any kind of questions or, regarding the project or regarding the process that we're talking about right now in terms of putting kind of unusual conditions on this project in order to prevent an unsafe condition from being addressed.
No, okay, with total understanding.
Can we have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
Bobby Falcon making a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Nina Aaron, second motion.
Any objections? No objections, the motion carries. I'll note that there's nobody in the room right now. Is there anybody on Zoom who would like to speak to this application? You can use the hand raise function. And I do not see anybody. Oh, I do see one hand.
Yes,
We do. Yes, so.
yes.
all
Yeah,
right,
I'll just speak briefly, but my name
Is
is
it just,
Paul.
I'm sorry, before you start, just introduce your name and place in residence.
I was just doing that. My name is Paul Janig, and I participated on this project. As a matter of fact, the letter that I just saw from the Environmental Advisory Council Committee, I was at the meeting last week, and during the course of the meeting, they had recommended that in between the proposed retaining walls, where there's a terrace, and then at the base of the lower retaining wall to the edge of the work area, so to speak, that the applicant switch out the seed mixes that they propose for grasses and things of that sort, and kind of outline that a plan should be put together that use native wildflowers and a variety of native seed mixes that would be established in those areas, excuse me, to act as mitigation. And so the plan that you just put on at the very beginning, which was done from that meeting to probably the Monday, it was submitted to the town. So I believe Jan had a chance to briefly look at it, but it outlines what the content of that letter from that board was. So it addresses that. So it's a mitigation plan. It's called MP1. If you want to go to it, you can. There it is. So if you look at the plan, it shows the proposed retaining walls. And then in between, it's on the upper part of the where the house and the patio deck are. There's a very narrow slope there from where the security fence is. And that'll be it's called out, there's a seed mix that's called for there. So you would simply go to the color, the label on the seed mix, and then over to the right side of that plan is the list of what the contents of that seed mix are. And then on the next tier between the upper and the lower retaining wall, there's another call out for seed mix. And in addition to that, on the the pathway down from the driveway down to the terrace, there's a slight slope. I think it's 0 to 25 and 0 to 75. I've additionally called for a biodegradable jute mesh mat to be placed over the seed mix, just because it's not quite level, just to stabilize it until the seeds start sprouting. And then on the very lower, between the brook and the lower retaining wall, you can see those little circular and then semicircular. Those are the seepage pits that gentleman earlier talked about. And in that in and around that area is another type of seed mix, which is like basically a border edge seed mix. And again, the contents of that are on the key to the right of the diagram. And then you'll see where it says BYB and then /6 and then BYB/6 over here, these little islands. Those are bayberry shrubs that we would plan to install. And then you can see where the silt fence line is between the boulder retaining wall next to the brook and then the work area. So that's the mitigation area that we're proposing. And Jan had expressed that putting something like that instead of grasses would work towards our mitigation. And then if you go way to the right of the diagram. Oh, excuse me, I apologize. Go way to the lower left, let's say the southwest corner of the diagram. That's it. Now, if we could go down, down a little more. There you go. And a little more if you don't mind. And that calls out the general planting note. So it says how you'd go about doing it, how you'd prepare the ground, when you'd conduct the work. And then over here is a monitoring program, which effectively says that you're going to, build what you said you were going to build. Then you're going to provide a report to the town with photographs that says this is what an as-built, if you will. And then we'd have a monitoring program that would go over 3 planting or growing seasons. And that's in the monitoring program, items 1 and items 2. And then a maintenance program, which effectively allows the owner to go down there and, by hand, do any removal of invasives of that sort. So it's not exactly hands off, but it's, if there's anything that got down there or a branch fell, they could take care of it by hand. And then the final call out is a mitigation guarantee that, we'd have replacing kind of any woody plants that would be during that 3 growing season period. And then way at the very bottom, I think there's a prohibition. So it's basically a non-use of herbicides, pesticide applications, not only in the wetlands, but on the 100 feet from it, which almost, takes really almost the entire property. So that's kind of the bones of what the mitigation plan that we put together to address that letter that you saw earlier from the environmental board. Okay.
Thank you very much. That was actually a great walkthrough of that mitigation plan. Okay, so I'll just double check. Is there anybody else who in the public who would like to speak to the application? That was more of an expert public view. I don't see any hands. Okay, can we have a motion? And again, so I'm going to ask for a motion to close the public hearing. That's based on the fact that we've had this, this conversation. We understand the kind of the import of this request. And the kind of the existing, unstable condition, as it's been represented to us. So can we, with that in the background, we have a motion to close the public hearing on this application?
Brenda Barbuck, I second the motion.
Right, any objections? No objections, the motion carries, the public hearing is closed. So I think, as far as moving this forward, I think we have to have just kind of very clear conditions, related to, Valerie, I know you were kind of recording these, but we can restate these.
Sure. First of all, the first condition would be that the remediation plan is reviewed and approved by the village engineer. Second condition would be that the mitigation plan is also reviewed and approved by the village's wetland consultant, and also incorporates the feedback from the July 20th, 2023 Environmental Advisory Council memo.
Okay. I think that's clear. Any last minute comments on that, or corrections or additions from the board?
I just want to, we talked about the barberry earlier, and they called out barberry as the shrub, so.
I think they called it bayberry.
Oh, bayberry, oh,
So we're.
Yeah, it's not.
By the way, I whispered the same thing.
I just want to make sure, we're planting, I just want to say, native species plantings, that's
Yeah.
all.
And actually that walkthrough that, I think was actually really illustrative and,
That was
and,
nice.
and helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you. All right, so can we have a motion to approve this application with the conditions listed?
Bobby Bowker, a second motion.
And we will do a roll call.
Nina Aaron,
I,
Carla Bowker,
Aye.
Brenda Burback. Aye. Bill Correa.
Aye.
Carla Elliott. Aye. And Cheryl. Warren.
Aye. All right, motion carries 6-0. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
good luck.
To cloud saving, so you need to first satisfy the village engineer and. Well, the AC before.
And the village's wetland consultant, and then that all goes then, I guess, back to Joe for a final work permit.
Okay, so we need a sign up from Jan, or we. So,
Yeah, I have to go through the plan to make sure that my comments were addressed.
Okay,
And if I have any outstanding comments, I'll I can even reach out to the
okay,
engineer.
well, how will we receive notice when that's done, if this will be fully permit? Is there any way we can pull the permit to start the work that's not that far around the house?
Still need,
They do catch basins and they water.
and you have to talk to Joe about that,
Village engineer, we approve and change the change. Still.
Yeah, so yeah, you can contact the building department. To start off with the building department as to, because this sounds like a different building permit than one that's tied directly to this.
Okay,
If it's not, then Joe will tell you that you need to have the resolution approved as well as all the conditions of resolution before the building permit.
time frame roughly. For the resolution.
Well, you've got to you've got to have some back and forth with Keller
Yeah.
Sessions.
All
So
right,
I would go ahead and do that. In the meantime, we'll
Right.
work on getting the resolution.
okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you very
all right, guys, thank you.
Good
Good
luck.
luck.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll just really quickly, if we could just do like a 1 sentence update of the adjourned matters. We have Snowden Avenue.
So they asked, Snowden Avenue, they requested an adjournment. They're still working on the comments that they received last time from seekers.
We have 19 Campwoods.
So we did not receive any new information, and the last communications we had was an email that was sent to Jamie on June 26th, noting that they were still working on the survey of the property.
All right, so this is their second adjournment.
This is their second adjournment.
All right, and 99 Crook.
And if you'd like, we can ask specifically for a next meeting to have an update as to where the project is from the applicant.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Okay. Now, all right, so we have one other item on the agenda, and this is a proposed zoning code amendment regarding cannabis cultivation, processing, and distribution. So I guess the BOT is asking this board for kind of feedback on zoning text amendments. So pull that up and talk. I don't know.
I can give a little.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if who's best suited to do that.
So.
We did that.
Okay, so the village board was interested in, this does not deal with the retail, that's a separate matter. Still sorting out what is ultimately going to be approved from the state. But the board was, the village has received some calls dealing with potential indoor growth facilities as well as potential like light manufacturing or warehousing. And in looking at the current zoning regulations in relation to those types of uses, to a larger extent, we already have light manufacturing and warehousing and freight movement uses within some of your industrial districts. And so the thought was you do not necessarily, there's nothing in the zoning code right now that allows for indoor growing facilities. So the thought was to combine that, not necessarily as like a specific agricultural use, but more as an industrial use because of the fact that indoor growth facilities do require more mechanical equipment and the like. And so instead of just focusing strictly on cannabis, but creating a new use within your zoning, which would be cultivation grow facilities, and this would be specifically such as like indoor facilities such as greenhouses or hothouses, where the primary function and activities for production, preparation, and sale of crops as a commercial enterprise. So it's not necessarily specifically a cannabis regulation, but it's just going to be added a new new use underneath the industrial use groups. And what we are proposing then is some additional requirements and performance standards in the industrial use groups for those particular uses, and those are also outlined in red. And just for the board's edification, the particular the uses in which, the zoning districts in which these uses would be allowed in would be specifically your IR and PWA. And PWA is by the Brander's Pill Factory along Water Street, and IR is where your Sing Sing Correctional Facility is, but the IR district already allows as conditional use light manufacturing as well as warehousing, and the PWA also allows for those uses. So this would just be added in along with those other uses that are already permitted or are conditional uses.
And is this a conditional use as well?
This would be a conditional use as well.
Can we talk, look, I mean, because it speaks specifically to the planning board's role. Some of these conditions, I think the prior one in terms of, additional security risk and some other.
Right. So I can run through the first one really focuses on heightened security, so that you would be allowed to ask for safety, security, emergency access plan, as well as a submission of plan to representatives who to contact from the business, available 24 hours a day. We also specifically added some language in there about fire hazard and explosives, including any heating systems or heat inducing or grow lighting, and that those systems should specifically include adequate safety devices. So those would be part of your site plan approval. There already is performance standards specifically dealing with vibrations, as well as direct glare, so for lighting, and those are already in that industrial use group, but we are proposing to add some additional standards dealing with any lighting shall be shielded to direct light onto the established uses and away from adjacent properties. And we specifically said there should not be excess of 0.1 foot candles at the property line. And then there's already in the current zoning issues with odor, which also tends to be an issue with the indoor grow facilities.
How is the odor language addressed in the current?
In the current code,
There.
yeah,
So here.
yeah.
All right, so any discernible odor outside the building in which the use is conducted. Yeah. Are there other examples of uses where the site plan can require security, additional security measures?
Well, for right now, what we're proposing for this would be all your industrial use groups.
Okay, so this is not specific to the,
No, so because this new use would fall under the industrial use groups, along with light manufacturing, self-storage and warehousing and freight, that they would also require those standards for the industrial use group. And so it would be all those uses could have those apply to it.
So it's giving you the authority if the use is such that you think it should have the extra security.
Right.
right, but not specifically the cultivation grow facility, any conditional use inside of there that we're reviewing a site plan if we felt that there was.
Right. Right. So it could be for freight, it could be for warehousing, and it could also be for the cultivation growth facility or light manufacturing. Of which the, new cannabis regulations, each one of those potentially has some part or role within the cannabis industry.
Right, even though the current use that's the only current applicable use group that you're adding would in this particular iteration would be the growth.
Right, so a lot of communities right now, like if you already have manufacturing, if a business wants to come in and manufacture, you know, related to the cannabis industry, they could just go in as a manufacturing business. So this is the one component or one license that is already not permitted or specifically defined in the village's code, and so we figured we'd bring that in as well.
Your code has no provision for like a commercial greenhouse.
Right.
Which is essentially what this is, whether it's growing cannabis or something else.
Or cut flowers.
Right. Right.
I just have one comment. There was a spelling error.
And is there, please let me know.
It says heightened security instead of heightened security.
Thank you. I'll put that as a recommendation.
Right there. I see.
Good catch.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is kind of amorphous, but I mean, I understand it. You know, the kind of going through security components. I don't know if there's like a, you know, how we would be advised and kind of how those types of measures would be determined, just because that's simply something, it's a role that this board has never really looked at before. So I don't know if there's a way for that to be kind of more clearly laid out. And it's really the, you know, and I have a little bit of a question about us, you know, us as a board determining that something is a particular security risk. That seems like it could be, I mean, a difficult decision, you know, determination in a fraught one, I guess. Where is that line drawn?
Well, typically with the cannabis industry, I would highly recommend that you have a security plan.
Yeah, but.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, you
This is
could
something
consult,
other Towns do.
Yeah,
you could consult with the police and the
standard-
fire,
It's
you know.
a standard. Look like requirement. extra
Yeah,
security.
yes, this is actually taken very similar language to like a number of places in New Jersey that have these requirements.
Now, but in Jersey, are they specific to cannabis or are they general?
So right, if you, right,
You really can't make them that specific.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
So like, let's just say, for example, if you ever, let's just cannabis aside, let's just say you ever had a situation where, you know, I don't know, there's manufacturing something of like.
Fentanyl.
Right.
A
Right.
pill factory.
A pill factory.
Right.
You might want extra security there too.
Yes.
Right, exactly, or you know, or something with like copper, or you know, there's just, or lithium batteries, I mean, I don't know, like, there's any of those things that could come into play
Right.
that you might,
Other things other than just cannabis.
yeah.
Right, and I think that's kind of where I'm more, you know, thinking about is just all of those different. Doesn't seem to come in front of us very often, but you know, because now it's here, it will.
The village opted in to allow manufacturing of cannabis.
It's not an opt-in.
The only opt-in, opt-out was for the
Right.
retail,
Yeah.
no, just for retail and on-site
Right.
conception. Everything else,
I
if
can
it's
tell you,
permitted in your
All
zoning.
of our
it's
commercial
permitted.
properties, we get inundated with Gas New York, looking to put retail establishments for marijuana in them. They want like 2,400 square feet, and they are coming in with security plans for the retail.
Right,
Mhm.
Buzz in door, check ID at the door and that.
right, I think the thing is, some of the, part of the reason we haven't.
Yeah.
Part of the reason the village hasn't dealt with the retail yet is because the
Right.
state is still working on regulations, and some of those regulations are gonna specifically, I mean, at least some of the proposed regulations. Have specifically said how big the store, I mean,
Yeah,
the
the
store
state is
retail has
spreading
to
out
be,
the
right?
operators before they place them in location.
They are, but the state also has not finalized their regulations.
Okay.
So it's sort of an odd thing that they're getting ahead of they're issuing licenses when they don't have their regulations done yet.
Right.
The regulations also limit what the municipality can do
Yeah.
in terms of regulating in particular dispensaries and on-site consumption.
So it's not an option, it's just conditional use. That's all it is.
Those are so the only, under the cannabis law that was adopted, the only area where the opt-in or opt-out was really an opt-out was permitted was for dispensaries, retail dispensaries and on-site cannabis, on-site consumption.
And the village
facilities.
opted out
Of the on-site consumption and,
but took no action,
and-
which basically meant opting
Right.
in to the dispensary.
So like a marijuana bar. Huh.
yeah, well, I don't know if, did anybody in Westchester? Yeah, but there's a bunch that opted out only on the on-site consumption, but are allowing retail.
Right.
But everybody's been kind of looking at, do we change our law? Do we amend our zoning law? And everybody's been waiting for the regulations to be finalized. Because the regulations are very specific as to what the state is regulating and what they will allow the municipalities to regulate.
But then to take this back to what, I mean, it's the Board of Trustees that's making these decisions. They're just asking us for a recommendation on the zoning change regarding this particular use. I mean, are there any other kind of site plan concerns that we would have or kind of conditions or, you know, anything
But
else?
you'd have your typical site
Right,
plan
right,
review authority.
I'm gonna go back to his last question before that one, which was, how does the planning board? How is the planning board qualified to determine what is a high security business? It sounds like it should be not in the planning board's hands.
Well, I don't- I understand. I mean, you're more than welcome to ask recommendations. You know, I think we would be able to identify what we think that a security plan is necessary. But I think if you remove this, then in all reality, you know, somebody could come in and say they're gonna put this business here and, you know, then if you started saying, well, we want an emergency act, we want a safety and security plan or other plans, that would not be under, you know, this is
Right.
really requiring.
It's gotta be in the code for
Right.
you to be able to require it.
Yeah.
You
I'm
need
just
that authority. in the
reserving
code.
your right to.
Yeah.
Right.
But so the planning board is the right place to make that decision. of
You're the
what's
one that they're gonna be in front of,
Yeah.
because they have to be in front of
Okay.
you for site
We
plan
would've-
approval.
Like, we could refer it to the police department.
Sure, if you wanted to, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some point, I mean, I'll say this because we've dealt with some of these, especially the grow houses and stuff like that, and so one of my colleagues, like, the fire department, like, you have to have gas, like, you actually have to have gas respirators before you walk into that, like, a site like that. So there's certain things that you're gonna wanna make sure that are already like,
I got a greenhouse on fire.
Yeah.
Think about that.
right, no, but in all. but in all- I mean, even if you have.
This greenhouse on fire.
Even if for some reason you have like, but just somebody like emergency, let's just say there's an emergency and you have to get into the greenhouse. You have to know what you're doing before you even step in there, like because of like even just the odor and the fumes. So there's just a lot that goes into, especially with that particular use, but there could potentially be other uses like also. Get into like greenhouse type of manufacturing, although I will say, I think to a larger extent, the warehouses that we've been seeing across, I mean, are upstate are
Orange County, right?
huge, right? Yeah, Orange County is full of them and they're really, really big. So I think if one does come into Austin, it's going to be much more of a smaller scale than,
We don't have the land.
right? We don't have all the land,
Farm.
right? I mean, we're talking about 1 million square feet of like warehouse. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge. They're huge.
Wow.
Big business.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have any further feedback on this. I think it's,
No, we're not expecting you to.
I know.
No, but I think if you know, we have a little bit of time, this is probably gonna go back to the village board in September. So if for some reason, you know, you have time to take a look at the language, if some reason something needs to be clarified, or you would like, you know, we can always send that recommendation over.
Sounds good. Awesome. Great. Thank you, Valerie. That was helpful. All right, guys, I have a motion, I think, to, we have a motion to adjourn
On that
tonight's
note.
meeting.
Bobby Bowker making a motion to adjourn.
Brenda Berman second that motion.
Any objections? No objections. The meeting is adjourned. And so you guys have,
September.
yeah, in September, have a great rest of your summer, August, vacation if you're going away.